Alright, so I'll admit, I never really cared much for Cruelty. It came out right around the time when I first joined the community, and I was straight. And I knew that Cruelty was gay, so why was I going to read it? Why would I read something that I wasn't interested in? That would have just been a waste of my time. Back then, at least. But then a few years later, I decided to start this show, and Unconditional comes out. At that point, I more or less felt obligated to read Cruelty, just so that I'm caught up on the story. And yeah, I still don't really care for it. The art is not all that great, the plot has been overdone to death, and it features that bullshit choose-your-own-path gimmick, which, in regards to Unconditional, doesn't really matter anyway. Now, in terms of Unconditional, I can't even find the proper words to describe how much I love this comic, really. The big thing for me is that it is not in a high school setting. Marcus and Reese are both out of high school, they've moved out of their homes and on the other side of the country, and they're living on their own. I just really like how mature this story became in terms of its story and the subject matter that is brought up. Personally, I never read a lot of young adult fiction. It had all of that whiny, bitchy, teen angst drama. And I experienced enough of that myself when I was going to high school. And I sure as hell was not going to read about it. And that's one of the reasons why I really didn't like Cruelty. I really don't like that high school teen angst. With Unconditional, there is a lot of adult subject matter. It's definitely for mature readers, and I'm not talking about the sexually explicit material. I'm saying that the older readers, the people in their 20s and 30s and so on, will be able to appreciate and understand this story a lot more than a reader in high school would. This story brings up a lot of adult issues like having a job, the aches, pains, and stress that comes along with having a job, the consequences of what kind of jobs you have available to you if you don't graduate from high school, not having a car to get to and from work, and basically just all of the harsh bullshit that comes with dealing with the real world. Unconditional is essentially one big social commentary with a lot of social and emotional conflict. And like I said in my review of Seeing Eye Dog, typically when I read these stories, I get bored really fast. But if it's done just right, like in Seeing Eye Dog or in films like The King's Speech and The Social Network, if it's done really well like that, then it's really entertaining. And I would have to say that Unconditional is much more than just entertaining. And what really helps this story from being so dull are the characters. In Cruelty, Marcus and Reese were pretty bland. There really wasn't much to them. Marcus was this, well, on the back, for the synopsis, it said that Marcus was this obnoxious gay rights activist, but you didn't really see that in terms of the story. Reese had a drug issue, and there was something revolving around that in the story, but again, there really wasn't much to that either. In Unconditional, it's like their personalities and character development were shot up with steroids and sent into overdrive. It's insane. Reese is still struggling to deal with his drug addiction, and because of that, he has even more limitations to the job he has. And basically, the only job he has available to him is working at a warehouse, working up to 16 hours a day doing heavy manual labor. And on the other side, with Marcus, we finally get to see that obnoxious gay pride. And it is really obnoxious. Marcus has changed a lot since Cruelty, and it's all because that he's finally around this group of gay pride activists. And once people get into mobs, especially people on both sides of the gay rights movement, once passionate people like that get into groups, things get pretty nasty pretty fast. And then there's a whole bunch of fringe characters, and even they are memorable. I was able to connect with each main and minor character at some level. And since I'm so invested with these characters, I actually feel and follow their emotions. And the emotions are all over the place. Ruckus did an excellent job on grabbing the reader and just throwing them around on this wild, emotional roller coaster. I laughed, I nearly cried, I got really angry, aggravated, and By the end, I felt emotionally drained. I have never felt so engaged, nor have I felt so strongly towards a story than I did with Unconditional. It yanks at your heartstrings and just whips you around the entire way through. Of all the furry publications I've read this year, if there is one that is deserving of popularity, recognition, and several awards, it would have to go to Unconditional, hands down. Now, there is a free online version to read, but don't settle for that. You're missing out on the extended ending in the printed version. And the ending is like just the cherry on top. It completes everything. I swear, the ending is so good, my eye started watering up. I was that close to full out crying. If you haven't already, please buy the printed edition. It's worth it. I cannot stress that enough.